Well, there is no doubt that Trump has ruffled feathers. That's his style. He's not very diplomatic. In the defense area, I think he is causing some real problems and a real need to rethink. In the tariffs area, I actually think he's on less certain grounds, but he again is going to cause major problems, and Europe actually has a big problem. And just to make a point, one of the issues I think about President Trump is he's far more consistent in his policy approaches than people often think. I mean, for example, in the defense, in defense, to give you an example of that, in defense as far back as 1987, uh, Trump, and it was long before he actually announced he was going to get involved in politics, he actually he bought space in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and I think the Boston Globe to actually rail against American spending on being the policeman of the world, and argued very strongly that America should send a bill out for what it was doing. At the time, it was quite bizarre. And most people lost sight of that. So that particular view that he's had of reality goes back a long time. His view on tariffs, well, tariffs are very much his policy instrument of choice. So he has been disruptive, but in part he's been disruptive because we on this side of the Atlantic haven't actually dug deep enough into what it is that this man, what it is that he's thinking, how he operates, and haven't paid enough attention really to the core issues that he has in politics. We've been dismissive of him because of his buffoonery and his style. But I think there's been a failure on this side of the Atlantic, particularly after Trump won, after the first Trump administration. We knew what was coming and we weren't prepared.
Okay, thank you. Question 2. Parties within the EU, including countries, have some differences on how to deal with the United States. How do you think Europe's interests should be maintained?
Well, Europe's interests should be maintained by Europe actually deciding what it is, what commonality we have in taking the defense area, for example.
Sorry, Dick, can I stop you? Can you, in order for us to get this automatic switch, can you just say answer and then break? Okay.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
All right, so once again, go.
Answer in the area of defense. Well, actually, and oddly, I'm going to say Trump could be doing us a favor. I mean, we have been, particularly since the invasion of Ukraine, we're doing an awful lot of talking, but there is still an awful lot of ground between the various countries in Europe. You know, I've had a view for a long time that Europe should learn to stand on its own 2 feet in a whole series of areas, and this is one of them. And I think that the divisions, we in Europe, we like to have the debate, and we like to have many different debates, but we don't always come to a consensus or to a central point. So the first thing that Europe needs to do is decide where we actually stand on issues like, for example, the ongoing war in Ukraine. We've had years now to actually come to some sort of consensus, and we haven't. And the reality of it is we're divided. We need to establish what it is we want to do in the defense and in other areas. Macron has been speaking for some time on strategic autonomy, but we never moved we haven't moved the clock on that. So I think that we face a challenge, and in a large part we face a challenge because we haven't actually, we're doing a lot of talking, but we haven't actually made the steps that we need to make to establish our own position. If you look at the debate that's going on about the arming and the manner in which the various proposals put forward by Callas have been dealt with, and put up, shot down. Again, they illustrate that there is a huge amount of distance between the various countries in the EU. And Trump and his policies may be doing us a favor in that they may be telling us it's time that we reached consensus, we reached a common position, rather than always endless debates.
So what do you think Europe's response to Trump's economic sanctions should be?
On the economic sanctions area, oddly enough, Europe might be in a better position than we are in the other area because we do have common policies. The let's take the one that I've a particular interest in is the pharmaceutical area. I mean, a number of member states in Europe are in a face a real bind if Trump does what he's proposing to do now, to introduce the very, very harsh tariffs in pharmaceuticals. Like Ireland, for example, pharmaceutical exports to the United States from Ireland are a phenomenally large part of Ireland's exports. I think they're something close to 50% to the US. And it's not just Ireland, Denmark, Belgium, and virtually every EU member state has problems in this area. But I think that we are probably in a better position to deal with Trump on this. Because remember, the hurt, if he actually does what he's planning to do on pharmaceuticals, the hurt will be felt in the United States, where pharmaceuticals, where medicines have a very high cost anyway. So Europe has options. Europe can actually maybe can disconnect a little bit from the United States, can look for a country like Ireland, which is so heavily dependent on the US market, will be hit. But as a whole, Europe might be in a better position to fight back there than it is in other areas. The car area, I think Trump's tariffs there they actually have immediate impact on his neighbors. That's where the biggest impact will be. But there's no doubt it'll be disruptive for us. But I would have a little more confidence in the tariffs area, in Europe's capacity to fight back, than I do in Europe's capacity to deal with his defense switch.
Okay, we'll going to defense in particular. Is the United States becoming an enemy of Europe? Should the United States, or should the US assume greater international responsibilities, or should Europe go it alone?
The answer to that is complicated. On the issue, first of all, Europe should be more independent in this area. If you actually go back in history and you look back over the last century, over the 20th century, it's very interesting that after the First World War, you had a period where neutrality was a big issue in American politics. And by the way, neutrality was a big issue in American politics going right back to George Washington. Washington and Jefferson both preached that America should not become involved in foreign wars. After World War II, neutrality, disconnecting, became a very, very big issue. It's only at the end of the Second World War that America assumed the role that it has assumed in the Truman Doctrine. And the problem is, I think, Europe became probably too comfortable with that position. Europe was inclined to allow the Americans to carry the weight, to carry the can, to pay the tab, and we weren't paying the tab. So I think Trump, oddly enough, he's put a big challenge to Europe. First of all, in the current situation where we have a war being fought in Ukraine, where we have the horrors that we see in the Middle East, so we have other disruptive, and we have some frozen conflicts also in parts of Europe. I think it's a very difficult time for Europe, but I do think it's time that we became more independent. Now, how we're going to do that is difficult. I'm by definition, I'm a bit of a pacifist. child of the 60s, you might say. I don't like the armaments industry. I don't like the idea that we're going to invest huge amounts of money in building weapons. I just don't like that. I have very mixed feelings. But it is a reality that we face. We've become overly dependent on the United States. We need to learn to stand on our own 2 feet. And if we do stand on our own 2 feet, it will actually be better both for us and for the US. And I say one of the points I make in that is that we have to face the realities that we have a neighbor in Russia that hasn't, that hasn't lived up to all the possibilities that happened when the old Soviet system collapsed. I mean, it's very interesting. Commissioner Michael McGrath recently made the point that the prospect of Russian tanks rolling into parts of the EU is not as outrageous a thought as it was a few years ago. A few years ago, it looked like, I mean, if somebody said that to you, you think that they were mad. But if I were living in, for example, in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, I'd have some concerns. I can understand the concerns that operate there. Any of the countries that border on Russia, we need to actually be in a better position to protect ourselves. And if you're dealing with a country where the strong man, the strength is the ideal, you have to be able to show that you have a capacity to be strong too. As I say, that it goes against my every instinct, because I personally think I have a horror of the armaments industry. I believe that it has done great evil around the world. I think it has driven a lot of wars, particularly the powerful lobby in the United States. But nonetheless, I think we have to wake up to the reality, and we do have to come to a common consensus on this, and we do have to learn to stand on our own 2 feet, and that's going to be challenging.